Welcome to Scorched Earth and a general reading for the sign of Capricorn, Sun, Moon or Ascendant for the month of February 2023. I hope you're well. I'm using the Pagan Otherworlds Tarot for you today. A little bit of housekeeping before we begin. If the reading resonates with you and you'd like to go a little bit deeper, there will be an extended that you can access at the end. That's the first link in the description box. The second link in the description box is to the 6-month overviews that I've done for each of the signs, running obviously from January to June 2023. I actually did yours twice because the first time I did it, there was no audio. Hours and hours of my life that I will never get back. Anyway, it's done, and that's the important thing. That's the second link. The third link is to my private community over on Circle, the Order of the Phoenix. So if you're interested in any of those, you know what to do with that information. Okay, so let's see what's going on with you, Capricorn. Let's have 3 cards for Capricorn, please. So we have the 2 of Cups and we have the Justice card in your recent past. Current energy for Capricorn, please, is the 5 of Cups. Don't worry about that, we'll get into it. And what's coming towards Capricorn, please? Thank you. We have the 9 of Swords. Okay, so it looks like it's going to be a challenging month. There isn't really any way of getting around that. But forewarned is forearmed is often the way that I think about these things. It does seem to revolve around decisions. And this is interesting because this kind of theme has come up for a few of the signs now. It's like it's crunch time to make some decisions, but here is the point where the consequences of the decisions, should you make them or not make them, because I mean, let's face it, inaction is also a kind of action in and of itself. Yeah, I thought it was you. And it almost feels like you're kind of being pushed into a corner somewhat. I don't think the circumstances are pushing you into a corner. It feels more like you can't really avoid it any longer, energetically speaking. There's one thing as a Capricorn ascendant myself, and also the thing that I've noticed in Capricorns generally is that there are certain decisions that Capricorns make it find it very easy to make, and there are others, the ones that are a little less straightforward, perhaps the ones that are less to do with work or employment or how you gainfully spend your time, that the Capricorns swerve, because it means engaging with a part of themselves that they keep anchored down and very, very quiet for most of the time. You know, this is how you function. Compartmentalisation. And it seems like somehow the compartmentalisation is breaking down, and so there is a need to make a decision about something. And we see that with the King of Swords. There's lots of decisions being made here for you this month, but it's perhaps not even just the consequences of those decisions, it's the consequences of the compartmentalisation starting to break down. That's what I feel here. And so we have cards like the 5 of Cups and the 9 of Swords that see you needing to face things this month that you've spent quite a long time avoiding, possibly years, decades avoiding. They're all kind of coming to the surface this month. Well, let's get some clarifiers. We've got the 2 of Swords and the Justice card. We've got the Wheel of Fortune. Oof, and the World. Shall I flip this around so you can see what I'm looking at? Right, there we go. Get one more card for that. 2. Well, I said I wanted 1. I've got 2. Okay, tell me about the 5 of Cups, please. We've got the Hierophant. The 9 of Swords. And the Moon. Yeah, I mean, we can see where this is going, Capricorn, but stick with this. Like, this is not a time to turn away from what is coming up for you. I feel that very, very strongly. Tell me about this 9 of Swords. What do I need to know about this? We have the Knight of Cups. And we have the Magician. That actually is a combination that makes me really uncomfortable, Capricorn. I'm not going to lie. We'll get into why I feel like that, but that is, if I'm ever asked for a pairing that makes me feel uncomfortable, one that I think denotes something unpleasant, it is that combination of cards. So we'll get to that. But let's start back here first. What we have here, I think, is some pretty heavy karmic shit having started to come to the surface. Remember that this is your recent past. So it very much revolves around relationships, and this doesn't have to be your spouse or your boyfriend or your girlfriend or your they friend, whoever. It's about intimacy and intimate relationships. Possibly more about intimacy itself than the exact relationships that it refers to, if that makes sense. And then more specifically, your experience of intimacy, how you allow yourself to feel it. But it's close relationships that have been getting somewhat of an overhaul for you. I think things coming to the surface, things for you to look at. Because we've got this Justice card here that does very much talk about the consequences of things. But we have the Wheel of Fortune, the World, the Five of Cups, and the Three of Wands. Now, again, it's the one of two Five of Cups that we have on the table here. So we're talking about grief, we're talking about regret, we're possibly talking about resentment and bitterness. What we've got is something rising to the surface that is making itself known through your closest relationships. So these could be your children, could be your spouse, could be your boyfriend, girlfriend. It could possibly have something to do with a business partner, but honestly, I'm really not feeling that at all. Not with this King of Cups at the bottom of the deck. These are people for whom you have strong feelings. And one would assume that there is, in some way, corresponding strong feelings too, because this is about a union of two people together. So whatever way that this resonates with you, that's the way to take it. But I actually think that there's probably something right across the board here happening for you, Capricorn. Because, like I said, it's not actually about the actors that bring this particular production to pass. It is about what you are experiencing with these actors. And that's a very internal proposition for you. The Wheel of Fortune talks about it being time for us to really understand something, right? When the Wheel of Fortune comes in, we have this sense of the wheel turning either, upwards or downwards. And if I had to stake my flag here, it would certainly feel for you during, this time. And recent past can be literally this morning, before you watch this video, but it could also be 6 weeks back from here. The energy is kind of fluid with this, but certainly a sense that things are starting to turn and you are somewhat on a downward turn compared to where you would like to be. Now, this isn't a punishment, and it's really important to me, Capricorn, that you understand that this is not a punishment. This is an opportunity to change things for the better by engaging with a part of yourself that you choose not to engage with on a regular basis. And like I said right at the beginning, it's because that's what you've needed to do in order to function and be successful in other areas of your life. But it's time to take that Capricorn energy and apply it to the things that really fucking matter. And it could be, I'm sure there was some reference to core values in the last reading that I did for you in January, like this shifting around of core values. I don't think there's ever such a thing as too late, but certainly in terms of a redemption arc or anything like that. But there are situations whereby it's come a little late in the day to be able to affect the things that you are trying to keep hold of. Because your core values have shifted, I think that you've finally seen something important that perhaps you took for granted up until this point. Something that you assumed would at least stay where it is for a bit, and at some point in the future you would make space to deal with it. Well, that time has come, and the question is, do you have the tools to deal with this in the way that you need to? I think not, because the World card is here. So we've got something coming to an end, and we have a great deal of very uncomfortable energy associated with that. Like I said, Five of Cups is about grief, it's about resentment, it can be about bitterness, right? This is all really unpleasant energies. But ultimately they speak of somebody who is stuck in a situation whereby all that they can focus on is what they are losing. they do not focus on what remains. We've got this Two of Cups here in the background. You know, some of you have noticed the what looks to be like a Five of Cups here in this painting. I don't even know if you can see it, it's in the way. That, to me, as someone who has spent a great deal of her life in a Five of Cups kind of energy, is a reminder to look up and remember that two cups remain, and there are two cups to be grateful for. I mean, we've got the two cups here, and we've got the two cups down there. I mean, this is why it feels like there's some kind of sludgy karmic stuff that's coming up to the surface that is requiring you to look at it. If you're spending all of your time looking at what you have lost and mourning for what you have lost, or even worse, feeling resentful or feeling bitter about it, what you close yourself off to is the possibility of any kind of intimacy with anybody else in the future. Right? It's a true energy of holding on to, attempting to hold on to what has been lost, and not ever giving yourself an opportunity to start looking towards the horizon and seeing how you could change your life moving forwards and incorporate more of this intimacy in, right? Give yourself an opportunity to heal, ultimately, is what that's talking about. Now, when we move into your current energy, it is very... well, we've got the same thing going on, Capricorn. We've got that same sense of loss in here. Three cups are inverted and two remain, and we've got this same sense of intimacy being elusive for you. Now, again, I want to reiterate this. This is not about the people that are around you. They may well be the people who are bringing this lesson to you, but the lesson is yours and yours alone to experience and process in here. We have the moon there speaking about that which you do not see, and for me primarily that is your subconscious. And what we've got here is, I think, is anxiety that has come to the surface now, or is at least beginning to come to the surface. Like I said, a lot of what enables you to be so successful in one area of your life where you choose to put your effort is the fact that you can compartmentalize. Cut things off. Don't need to think about that. You know, I'm going to invest myself in this way moving forwards. It's somewhat of a trope that Capricorns have a 5-year plan, and that Capricorns are, you know, very invested in their work and their success and their career and all that kind of thing. All really important stuff. But the implication that we're starting to see here is that it has been at the expense of something. And you could say, well, it's been at the expense of my marriage, or it's been at the expense of the relationship that I had with, you know, X, Y, and Z. Maybe it's even the relationship with your children. But ultimately, what you have sacrificed here is a relationship with self, which it seems to me cannot continue any longer. Like it's like the energy is being so dense. It's being brought to such a point that it is so dense that it is impossible to avoid it anymore. It's impossible to ignore it. It needs to be addressed. This Hierophant here, I often speak of in terms of heritage and legacy. You know, what is it that you have inherited, and what is it that you are laying out before you? Because it could well be, without intending to do it, you have taken lessons that your parents have given you in your formative years. You might have almost certainly felt isolated and rejected in those experiences in early life. But without even intending to do it, you've come to a point where you are repeating the same pattern. And the unfortunate thing about that is that there are consequences. It seems to me that the consequences are the things that are really now starting to come to the surface. Like I said, it feels like things are starting to be made real. The compartmentalisation is breaking down, and the understanding of what you have lost, maybe it's even the things that you are afraid of losing, are right here, right in front of you, right now. You know, this is overthinking, this is worry, this is concern. It's also a card, though, and I need to point this out, of losing one's perspective. We can talk about insomnia and all that sort of stuff as well. And I have a very specific reason for being that, right? So there's this kind of arbitrary rule that I work to in the tarot, and it's not across all tarot decks, but the vast majority. it seems to be the thing, is that swords up are good. Here in the King of Swords, we have the sword up. That's a good thing. Ace of Swords, always depicted as up. Almost always. Not always, but almost always. Swords down, correspondingly, speak to something that is bad. It speaks to a lie. It speaks to something that is not a truth. It speaks to something that is inauthentic and deceptive in nature. That is my understanding, right? My fairly arbitrary rule for swords. And the one exception in the tarot, generally speaking, is the Nine of Swords, where the swords are stacked horizontally on the wall. Now, I've talked about this at various points over the last 3 and a bit years that I've been here on YouTube. Because it seems to me that this is all about perspective. If you walk into a room and you're already, uncomfortable, maybe you're in a state where projecting hard, you do not trust, you do not feel a sense of intimacy with the people that you have entered this room with, and you see those swords on the wall, that is an attack. That's going to feel like something that is a violation, because you're looking at those swords and you're going, what the fuck are they going to do with those swords? Those swords can only be there for one reason, and that is to hurt me. Now, the question of perspective comes in, because for somebody else, they would come in and go, oh, what a lovely set of swords you've got. What lovely wall adornments. It's like something out of a Scottish castle right there. No anxiety there. Trust in the people that they are with, It creates an entirely different situation. Now, consider the possibility that you have deep-seated hurts that have been ignored, compartmentalized by you for a long time, I mean lifelong time, Capricorn, that now, because of circumstance, appear to be trying to speak to you. The subconscious, the crayfish is coming out of the water, and it's like, knock, 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 Capricorn, hey. Something about the situation that you find yourself in is incredibly triggering to you. And we could stop there and say, this is triggering to me, and now I'm going to kick the shit out of anybody who tries to put me in a room with these swords. The problem is not the room. The problem is not the situation. The problem is the mindset that has been being built in the background by your subconscious as a direct result of the trauma that you have experienced in your early life, right? The way that your subconscious has created coping mechanisms, coping strategies to deal with loss, rejection, a grief that sits inside the soul. There's an opportunity to change here. But if you're walking into a room that has 9 swords on the wall and you have a 5 of cups that is sitting deep within you, then the spectre of loss, I feel, is rising again. The question is, what are you going to do with it, Capricorn? Because make no mistake, this is a teaching moment. There's something heavily fucking karmic about what is going on here. This realignment of your core values possibly has happened too late for you to be able to salvage anything meaningful from the people that are currently forming your situation. But it is an opportunity to sort this out now, so that in the future this does not exist in the same way anymore. Like this kind of pattern of overthinking, compartmentalization, grief, stuffing it all down, doesn't happen in future relationships. This is about a clarification of your energy. It's about a way to lift the burden from you, because it has been burdensome. The moon says that right there. However happy you think you may have been for the longest time, this is the script that's been running underneath. Is your version of happiness just, there's nothing shit distracting me from anything at the moment and I can just get on with my job? Possibly. Is that true happiness? Absolutely not. At best, that is a state of neutrality. When we move into February, we have that same 9 of Swords appearing here. and they are stacked horizontally too. I mean, you might say, well, they look like they've shifted a little bit, so maybe that's a good thing. Yeah, possibly it is. Like, it speaks to the possibility of, well, it speaks to the fact that the thing that you're concerned about still hasn't actually been alleviated in your mind, but there's a slow dawning realization of the truth starting to come through here now. Now, I did say to you that this combination of cards makes me particularly uncomfortable. It always has done. And it comes down to the power of the magician, right? Because what the magician is designed to do is manipulate realities, right? He takes all of these aces that he has on the table and he combines them with his will to get what he wants. He's about manifesting reality, but he does it through manipulation of all of the aces in exactly the right way to create what it is that he wants. Well, we've got the Knight of Cups, which is Pisces energy, right? It's very soft. It's very loving. It's very giving. What we have here is the potential for deceit, manipulation. That's what I don't like about these two cards here, and I particularly don't like them when they're coming up under the Nine of Swords, because this is somebody who will say whatever they need to say to get their way. They will profess love to someone to get their way with things. And it's someone who doesn't have the power to be direct about what they need. Like, everything's got to go around sideways. Now, the really difficult question for you here, Capricorn, is, are you that person? Have you been triggered to the extent now that you are willing to say anything to maintain the status quo in a way that you are comfortable with? Or is this someone else? Because it could well be that you're coming to a realization that you're in an incredibly manipulative relationship, that it is in fact something that is bordering on abusive. Maybe you just distracted yourself because of that ability to compartmentalize for the longest time, where you just have not put the pieces together. I have a Knight of Cups and the Magician. Ace of Pentacles. And the Devil. It's a Capricorn card. The Page of Cups. The way that I would like to interpret this is that you have an opportunity here to do something quite special. You know? Part of it is going to have to be accepting that things are not as they were. Right? We've got the Ten of Pentacles in the bottom of the deck here. This is the Shadow card, and this is the structure upon which you have been relying. Perhaps it is the thing that you've been working towards all of this time. And we have that same Knight of Cups appearing underneath here. I mean, maybe this situation for you is the way that you show your care and affection and love for people is by working yourself so fucking hard to provide for them. But we've got the Nine of Swords appearing again underneath here. It is insufficient that your core values change and everything else remains the same, Capricorn. You know, I'm reminded of that thing that actually gets bandied around a lot in this house between my kids. I have been repeating this to my kids for the longest time, and I'm glad, because now they're repeating it to people that they know, and that is, an apology without changed behavior is just manipulation. We have manipulation here, right there, whether it is by you or it's by somebody else. And what the realization of the manipulation, which is really what I feel like is going on here, whether you are on the receiving end of it or whether you are the one doing it, is because you're trying to hold on to a situation that is evolving past you. You're not evolving with it. You're trying to control it. You're trying to keep it the same. Whether this turns out to be a really good reading for you or a really bad reading for you, such as those things even really exist, is what you choose to take from the experiences that you are having right now. If you continue to be having the Nine of Swords being essentially your guiding principles here, and be like, this is triggering, this feels awful, this can't continue. It has to be exactly, it needs to stop trying to change. That's where your control issues are probably going to come out. Devil. I need to control this situation because I am being made to feel uncomfortable. And perhaps it is that you would find a way to redouble your efforts on something emotionally, right? Put more attention into it than you have done up until this point. If it's a good reading for you, it's because you recognize the Nine of Swords as trying to tell you something about what discomfort looks like for you. All the tools you need to grow are in the places that you don't want to look, Capricorn. And you've spent so long not looking, it almost feels like they've come up behind you and ambushed you. This sense of you being pushed into a corner by the energies is because it simply will not do for you not to look at these things anymore. If you do look at these things and these swords start to lift, there's a truth that's starting to percolate through to your brain now. And it is perhaps that your emotional model, the one that you've been following for the longest time, because that's the one that was modelled for you by your family, by your support network, by what represented stability and security to you, was frankly fucking bollocks. I mean, it could just be as simple as that. And if it is frankly fucking bollocks and you've been following that for a long time, then this question of what you've inherited and what you're leaving behind becomes really, really pertinent, because here's an opportunity for change. Here's an opportunity to do something differently. Here's an opportunity to really look at and experience being yourself in a very different way. I don't think it's an over-egging of the pudding to say that this is going to be a really difficult month for you. But it could be a month that changes everything if you allow it. If you allow yourself to learn the lessons that are being laid out in front of you. If you try and control the situation, if you try and maintain it the way that you've been used to it being, all you are doing is perpetuating that Five of Cups. You are perpetuating that sense of loss. You are perpetuating the Nine of Swords. And the stark reality is that you get to choose which one of these that you do. Now, it goes without saying, for someone who is actually concerned with being happy for a change, instead of being neutral or, really, really valid at work and everything else is going to shit. This could be a beautiful opportunity, but it has to be approached in the right way. Trying to keep everything the way that it was is perpetuating the anxiety, it's perpetuating the loss. Here is an opportunity for healing that doesn't really come across, doesn't seem to come up too often, not at this level. So when you start to feel uncomfortable, and maybe even when you start to feel a little bit panicked, this is not the time to run away from that. It's time to lean into it. It's time to work out what this is trying to show you. And take the opportunity to start doing things differently. It's a pretty stark message, Capricorn. But I feel like this is something that we've been circling around for quite a long time. And you get so close and then you pull away, and then you get so close and then you pull away. And whatever's happened during Capricorn season for you, whatever happened during that Mercury retrograde period, it did see a shift in your core values, and it did change what you think was important, what you thought was important, to what you actually recognize to be important now. And in that realization, it makes sense that everything is going to have to change. Your external world is a reflection of your internal world, and if your external world is going a way that you don't like, it's not about controlling that. It's about reaching in and seeing what it is that is compromised, what it is that is feeling difficult within here, so that you can work with it to create the kind of shifts internally that would then lead to the shifts externally that would bring you much more in the way of happiness. There has to be an engagement with your emotions this month. And I think it's really important for you, when you engage with your emotions, to be able to sit with what of those emotions are healthy and which of them are not, and start making decisions about what you are going to allow in, to help make the decisions. But the important thing to note, I get sick of the sound of my own voice sometimes with this one, right? When you ignore something that hurts, it doesn't go away. It might do in the short term. If you're lucky enough to be able to hyper-focus on stuff, then you can absolutely hyper-focus your way out of that for short periods of time. But the length of time that we're talking about here, which is years and decades, those feelings have just sat there and they've possibly grown. They've certainly not reduced in intensity. And now it's time for them to come out. And that could be really quite messy. But if you can remain self-aware enough to be able to sit with these feelings as they come up, and before you do anything that could be construed as destructive or controlling in the situation, catch yourself and say, is this who I want to be? Is this the behaviour of somebody that I would admire? And if it's not, then don't take that next course of action. But rather sit with yourself and work out where that came from. Dig deep. Because this month really could change your life, but you have the power to decide whether it changes your life for the better or the worse. I'm going to leave it there. I am going to go over to Vimeo, so if this resonates with you at all, you're welcome to join me over there. We're going to be pulling this apart a little bit more and investigating like we do. It's the first link in the description box. And if you're not coming over there, that's absolutely fine. Please just do heed what I say. Like, you can, at every point in every decision that you make in the next coming month, 6 weeks, pick a road that will lead you eventually to a kind of healing that you have never experienced before. But where you try to hold on to and restrict other people, control circumstances and situations, well, let's say this is all pretty karmic in nature, what's going on here, and that needs to be attended to. So I wish you well, because it's not an enviable energy that you've got to work with here this month. And know that I love you all very, very much, and I'll see you soon.